All right, hit record. Good. We're good. We're good.
Are we on the air?
We're
Oh, we're
well.
not. We're not live anymore. Oh shit.
We're not live anymore.
We're
This is
taped.
we're taped before live studio. Nobody is what we are.
Coming to you taped now. Board2Dev. This is perfect because if we mess up,
Yeah,
it's easy for us to edit.
yeah.
There's no pressure.
No pressure. No one jumping in the comments.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
it's just us.
Oh, wait a minute.
Oh,
Wait a minute. The show started, so I guess we should get into the intro.
yeah. I guess we should.
Yeah.
Uh, hey
I'm
everyone,
Chris. I'm
and
Chris.
I'm
That's
Jason.
Jason.
Yeah,
And yeah, we're the Board2Dev crew.
yeah. We're
Uh,
so bored that we're making this podcast, and we're excited to relaunch it because we have clarity of what the fuck it should be about.
yeah, I'm excited. Um,
Dude, so much. I'm so excited. We From the last time that we did any version of this podcast, we have exponentially grown.
that's
and
for
I,
sure.
dude, and I'm fucking excited to do this. We are out of character. We've decided to keep this. Um, me not being Chet, Chris not in the rad profile, and just really focusing in on the business of board games and card games and pop culture as it relates around that, and just really development in general. Anything that we can think of. I mean, we have since landed, I would say, probably into a lot of different things. So
Yeah,
I'm excited.
me too. And for the first time, viewers or listeners, Jason and I have worked in a variety of different uh, tech and entertainment spaces, experience in a multitude of different areas, from developing board games to comics, graphic novels, bringing our ideas to life
Animations.
for animation. We've had actual things produced and sold. We've been to several different types of conventions promoting our products. So we've met a lot of people, a lot of experience. And I think what we're trying to do is create a show that, one, gives us the forum to talk about anything we want to talk about. We like to talk about, as Jason said, pop culture, games, video games. We're really excited about all of that stuff. But
Yeah.
two, to bring you into our journey as we take some really creative ideas and hopefully bring them to market. We've got a lot of things that have been cooking over the past couple months. We developed a new studio, and we're working on some exciting projects. So we're hoping to use this forum not only just to talk about things and bring some special guests on, but also talk about what we got going on too. Whether they fail or they succeed, hopefully you'll be along for the ride, and I'm excited to get into it.
Yeah, man. But I mean, look, let's just kind of start it off, and let's talk about the studio that you referenced. I think that's super important. When you think about our journey, and for those of you that have been involved in the journey, welcome to a new source of information from us. But also, when you think about like where we were going, right? We had been really successful with unicorns and zombies. We've been, like Chris said, at the conventions, and so we started to like play with this idea of how can we really take everything that we've learned to like a new level, but still keep it in this like creative capsule, right? Like, and I think that's kind of the best way to explain like really what Chris and I had to end up doing is trying to find this like weird creative capsule. And so we came up with this idea where we would just have a site like anyone else would, but we wanted a site where we could just vomit our ideas, whether they're in production or thoughts or they've been in production and sold. And so we actually came up with Cardboard Monster Studios. You can find that at cardboardmonsterstudios.com. We update it when we can. Like we've said in the beginning, we're very busy working on tons of projects, and it's really exciting because when you find that person that you click with, that's creative, whether or not you wanted to do it on your own and try to get it out there. There is really something behind it, and Chris, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but there is something behind finding that connection where you become creatively driven and inspired. And I think that, you know, when Unicorns and Zombies first started, for me it was like it was like a passion project. I just wanted something to do to see if I could do it, and then it just kind of took off and became this thing of like, holy shit, like I'm building something that's like a legacy. And I remember, you know, and we're kind of doing the Spider-Man movie thing where we keep telling our like origin story over and over again. But you know, new podcast, who gives a shit? But you know, I remember going and sitting down with Chris at Coffee Bean in Santa Monica on 3rd Street, and just kind of showing him like, hey, this shit's from my head. Check this out. And it was like presenting in front of Chris like this. Basically, I think at the time, and maybe it not had not been, but I actually had like the actual prototype, like done and like out in front of you, right? And that was exciting. So like when you think back to that time in Coffee Bean, like what were your first? Because we live in LA, right? So you always hear stories about people wanting to do shit, and there's literally like no follow through. And for the 2-3% people that do follow through and get really successful, they forget about everybody else. So like what were your first like impressions, or like what was your like gut feeling when you saw that? Like what was that like? I've always been curious to hear your side of it.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, you know, being involved in industries where you're surrounded by people, like a lot of creative people in LA that are in the entertainment industry, everyone has lots of ideas. Everyone has lots of things they want to accomplish. You go to a restaurant, I mean, you know, we're in the middle of a pandemic, but hopefully post-pandemic, you sit in the middle of a restaurant in Los Angeles and you have 15, 20 people talking about what they're working on, movies, TV, scripts, or whatever the hell they're talking about. And so I met a bunch of people, really exciting, interesting people, but there's a small percent of people that actually do the shit they say they're going to do. And partly, one, because it's difficult. Like there's no question about it. Any avenue you're looking to get into, it's extremely challenging, right? But two, like the level of effort to be able to then take an idea and then get it all the way to the stage where you're close to like be able to present it to someone else and like package it up, regardless if it's a freaking comic book or it's a script, if it's a game. And so, you know, you had been talking about this idea or concept for some time. You were into tabletop games and you're into card games. You know, Magic was one thing that I know you were really into at the time. And it was pretty awesome to be able to see like you invested the time to build out all the mechanics, all the things that finally came to life in the ability to play and game test, which is a massive leap where other people get stuck or they lose their passion, they lose their drive, they give up. So that was exciting. And at that moment I was like, okay, here's someone that's like passionate enough, like, fuck it, I'm going to go make it happen. And if I fail, whatever, but at least like I'm going to start off with like one idea and hopefully bring it to market. And from that moment on to being able to see the fully developed copy of the game and being sold on Amazon and people playing it at conventions is pretty fucking epic, you know, and not too many people can say that. So it was an exciting time, man. And it reminded me of the days, you know, before you and I connected years and years ago, where I owned my own company and worked with a bunch of people.
Yeah.
Developing graphic novels and comic books, and met so many people that were like amazing artists and amazing writers and inkers, and only a select few actually like did the shit to like produce something amazing and try to sell it. Whether they failed or not, it was pretty awesome to see the hustle at like, you know, Independent Alley at the conventions and people trying to like pitch their books, but at least they fucking created a book.
Yeah,
you know, and
exactly.
and so that reminded me of those times. So I think that's what Cardboard Monster Studios is, man. It's like taking those ideas and trying to bring them to market. And for those that don't come to market, that's okay. But we want to share those freaking ideas with you anyway. Like maybe they never get to a point where they're out, but hey, Jason and I were, you know, sitting back and we're like, what about this? texting back and forth, zooming back and forth.
Yep.
And then we're like, a fucking crazy idea. I mean, extremely mad popsicles.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people are like, were you guys high or fucking drunk when you came
Yeah.
up with extremely mad popsicles? Like,
Yeah,
were
yeah.
you like, was it a summer day and you
Yeah,
were at
it's
a like drunk off your ass and you're like, look at this popsicle, dude. This
Yeah.
be cool if they fought. You know what I mean?
Are your popsicles fighting ice cream truck and ice cream man? Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're correct. They are. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I've always been curious, and we've talked about it a little bit, but kind of getting into your background a little bit, just in going back into thinking about like your comic book days and the things that you've done, right? Like, how have you been able? Because like creatively, man, you pump shit out faster than I can draw it, right?
Yeah.
So like creatively thinking, like in terms of like where you were in your previous endeavors and still kind of have always been playing in that realm, like how do you feel that has like helped with your creativity in terms of like what we're doing now with like Cardboard Monster Studios and some other things we'll kind of touch on at the end? Like how has that process helped you in this endeavor?
Well, as I said before, in previous endeavor, it's always important to surround yourself by people that can take your shit to the next level, right? Like take your idea and go, have you thought of this? Or it's one or two things. Either have somebody around you that if you throw an idea, they can take that idea and suggest, and next thing you know, it's like an elevated idea. Or surround yourself with someone that can like execute what you're trying to accomplish, right? So like if you're like for you and I'm like, what about this? And then you're like, cool, like let me like sketch that up real quick, or let me put that video edit together like pretty damn quickly. Or hey, what about this idea? And then you jump in and go, well, I think we should do it this, or what if we called it this? Like it's important to have one or many people that you're surrounded by, and that's how I've always thrived in a creative space. Is some of the shit won't stick, right?
Yeah.
Like we were on a call a week, 2 weeks ago, channel 86, which we'll get into on either this podcast or future podcasts, but really cool video content coming around. But it was cool to be around people, and we're just like throwing shit on the dartboard, and some stuff was like, as we're pitching like different types of video content, and we're thinking about different segments, and then other stuff was like, oh yeah, and then what if you did this, and what if you did that, and next thing you know, it's like, holy shit, that is so funny. But if you're just by yourself, you never take it to the next level. And so, I mean, I'm not saying anything nobody knows, but I think it's important as a creative, surround yourself by other people that can do that for you, and they'll benefit just as well. Like-minded people that like don't like embrace cool ideas, don't shit on them, and suggest different things, and also be honest with you if it's a stupid ass idea. Too many people in this industry shit on ideas. Because they're hard-headed, or they're like, it's not my idea, or they say that's shitty, and then they'll take your fucking idea and make it their own. Which, I mean, we could set up a whole podcast on what like some of those things that have happened over time, but maybe that's for another. We'll tease that out for a future episode.
Yeah. So I think that's super important, man. You know, like when I started down the endeavor of like creating a board game, my biggest fear of that, which I'm looking back now, and if you. It's not going to make sense because of how much shit is on Cardboard Monster Studios. But my biggest fear of doing a board game has always been like the lack of money to pay for an artist, right? Like I really want a fucking artist. And so, you know, I was fortunate enough to connect with an old friend who has since become a big, he's basically our only investor, who is really, I'm grateful for him. He is an amazing guy, and I love our connection with him. But in that process, it afforded me the ability to meet BJ, right? And so when you talk about like people and keeping yourself with people that are creative and push your ideas to the next level, BJ's art to me was like spot on. For those of you who don't know, I will throw thousands of dollars at Scotty Young. everything that guy does. I'm like, that's gold, and some of it's probably not. But I'm just like, oh, that's great. I need that. Like, I think just this past month alone, I've probably spent like $600 on fucking CGC comics. So, but I think like, you know, when I got to meet BJ, it was like, yes, that's the art that I want. But I also like saw that and I was like, I remember being able to do stuff that kind of looked like this. It was just not as refined, right? And I had bought an iPad and I was like, I need to figure this out, and I just didn't really know what I was doing. And so over time, like BJ's art like inspired the creative side of me again to be like, dude, I can't afford to pay for this guy forever, so let me take his style and make it my own and figure it out. And since BJ has become probably one of my closest friends and a really good friend of yours, and you know the connection was there at the conventions and stuff. But now I go back and I look, and I think I send you some of this shit every now and then where it's like, dude, look at the first time I tried to draw something for like our visions, right? And it was just like, holy shit, it's like a 2-year-old fucking drew it. Maybe a really good 2-year-old. But you know, in that time, getting back to what you're saying is like, it was you really, that you and BJ, mostly you, where it's like, dude, you could do better, like that's good, but keep going, right? And then when I sent something like, oh, it looks like shit, and I respect that, because it was like, okay, why does he think this looks like shit? And so it was like tweaking that and then teaching myself like, okay, this is how you have to do it. And now it's like, yo, I have an idea for this. I'm like, hold on, and I can sketch that shit super quick, and it becomes this like style of like, yes, that's good, right? And that's where Extremely Bad Popsicles came into play, because I was like, yo, this would be funny. And then it was just like an angry like zombie popsicle, and another popsicle was yelling at each other. But you know, over time, like even becoming friends with BJ and sending in my art, I am super happy and thankful, and I'm glad that I own this. But we are legitimately the last project that BJ will ever do in terms of paying him to do a one-off thing of art. And I paid him. We paid him for the entire art of Unicorns and Zombies, but that's the last thing he's ever done, and he won't do any more gigs. But you can't pay him to do anything. So unless it's something that's like really big, and he's like, yeah, I want to do it, and it's a close friend. But outside of that, he doesn't do it. And because of that, and I knew that pushed me to get to the point where we could do art. And so here we are. I don't know how many projects later, including Board2Dev the first time, and we were like, this isn't what people were going to want to hear, you know, like let's bring the real side of like product development. And so that's where we're at, you know. It's awesome.
Yeah. Do you remember what like obviously you are super into art and like comic art specifically, and obviously you have you know, created art for Cardboard Monster Studios, and previously that you got like your own style. Like outside of like BJ and Scotty Young and a few other artists that you mentioned, like date back to like whether it be early childhood, like who was like the first artist to like really go like inspire you to be like, man, I want to draw, like, and whether it be professionally, I just want to do it on the side as a hobby, or I want to work on a project. Was there like one artist in particular that was like, dude, that's mind blowing?
So I think yeah. Okay, so
I think I stumped you.
no.
Round
so,
one.
okay,
Round one.
Okay, yeah. So I'll kind of no, yeah, round one, crit 1-0-1, right?
1-0.
Yeah. So I think I could answer that, and it's a two-part thing, and I think from realistically thinking back to like my art career and like stuff that I did prior, like in terms of like animated art, so not on the spectrum of like fine art or fart, whatever you want to call it, but outside that spectrum. So I have two major influences that started me down the path of wanting to draw. So I was lucky enough to be born in the 80s, and I say that because late 80s, early 90s was prime for shit flooding your brain in terms of every animation had a different style. No one was using computer shit. It was hand drawn, farmed out, and then brought back, right? And so I remember watching a ton of shows as a kid. And then the show that fucking got me, and I was like, man, I want to do that for a living. Like I want to do that was Ren and Stimpy. Like that art style was like you went from this like Looney Tune esque art style to a really deep like just really detailed art, like right. SpongeBob SquarePants takes a lot of that from Ren and Stimpy. Like you would zoom in on like Ren and you'd see like the bumps and everything, or like Horseman and you see all this. So I really love that, and that was a time where I was like, that's what I want to like. That's what I want to draw. Like that's what it is, right? Kind of fast forwarding. Like I'm super inspired by Rick and Morty. I love that art style. It's actually super simple. But Rick and Morty and Aqua Teen Hunger Force, that kind of stuff is like very much like it's fun to draw. Like, and you have to be able to do it well, otherwise it's just kind of like, what are we doing here? But in terms of like inspiration for the animation piece, um, uh, that's what kind of drove me down that path. Now, in my late teens and early 20s, I actually got into like the fine art sector, and I was selling my art on canvases and shit. And my inspiration and my favorite artist from the fine art era, right, was Jean-Michel Basquiat. So Basquiat is
Never heard of him.
yeah. That dude is hands down one of my favorite all time fucking artists. Hands down. I know that when I'm successful and our shit gets purchased, I will find a way to buy an original piece. I love that dude's art. I think it's fun. I think it's impactful, and I love the debate between whether or not he was actually trying to be an artist or making fun of shit. Because like you'll see his art, and he actually is making it. It looks like he's making fun of a sculpture that is like displayed in some museum, and then this fucking art piece becomes millions of dollars, right? And it's like, well, we never really know. We're not gonna know, and people will say, "I know because like I'm his dad or whatever," and his dad fucked his whole thing up, and the poor guy died at 27 from heroin, but that's because no one gave a shit and like no one was paying attention to what was actually going on with him. And so he inspired me a lot as a like just like a classic artist type of situation. So a lot of
Yeah.
my old stuff that I would sell was like canvas, but it was very like, and I've drawn a few things on the iPad, but like if you give me a brush and a canvas and I can go crazy on that, it's actually really close to his shit. In fact, I sold some stuff. It was in Tustin, and I had like an art show at a coffee shop, and I sold like four of my pieces for like $900 a piece because the lady was like a big Basquiat fan, and she's like, "This is awesome, this is crazy," and it's actually the reason why I have the unicorn tattooed on my arm. That is actually the first piece of art that I had ever sold, and it was just this big canvas of this donkey with a horn that I called a unicorn. And it was just because I was like looking, and I remember I was like, I wonder if I can go outside and like be inspired like a Bob Ross type shit, right? And just see something and draw it. And I failed horribly at it, but then I was like, this is fucking hilarious. So I just finished it off, and I drew it, and the unicorn head kind of became just like a thing for me. Which spawned back in the day like a whole clothing line and took me down the path of like the fashion industry, and it was crazy, man. So those are my two big influences, and then
That's
obviously
awesome.
getting heavier into comics.
Yeah.
Neil Adams, you have to love Neil Adams, but I just looking at Scotty Young shit, I it's awesome.
That's great, man. And that's we're all influenced differently by multiple people. Can be one person, can be, it's like how it shapes your brain, your writing style, your art style. So that's pretty awesome. And shit, man, unicorns and zombies, I mean, it all come, it all, there's definitely it's interesting how things begin, for sure.
Yeah, and
um
we even talked about unicorns and zombies, right? Like with the boring adventures of Marvin Chubbs, and
yeah.
that's still a thing in the animation style. If you think about that, we've
Yep.
talked about
Yep.
what that is, and it's very much in the late '90s, like early '80s type style, right?
Yeah. Yep. I mean, I think there's been some groundbreaking animation over the past, 25, 30 years that definitely has inspired us to there's elements of that that might be in what we hope to produce, but there's some new things too, which is it's going to be interesting. So yeah, the Boring Adventures of Marvin Chubbs is something we're actively working on, which is a spinoff of Unicorns and Zombies.
Yep.
Sets place in 1980s mall. And I'll be honest with you, like the 80s thing over the past couple of years is come to light. There's a lot of movies and TV and stuff, and I think we were developing it. We were like, you know what, like maybe we pause on it and work on some other stuff and then come back to it, because we didn't want to like be like a afterthought of like this whole 80s push that has recently happened with fashion, with toys. Like I feel 80s, like the toys that made us on Netflix, like everything is like 80s based. And so we may have been a little bit late to the party, and we weren't copying the 80s thing. We're just really passionate about like 80s animation and 80s style.
Yeah.
But I feel good that we'll be able to produce that very soon. But I think we jumped to other projects that I think might be more innovative at this time. It's like you remember I don't know how everything was fucking vampires. Like there was TV show, everything was vampires, right? So if you didn't get in on the early stages and you came late to Vampire Party, like you're fucking dead in the water. So if you had something really good vampire wise, sorry, brother. Like, and then there's zombies, right? And like, thank God, Unicorns and Zombies hit like in the earlier stages when zombies were really popular, but everyone got on the zombie train. Zombies are still cool, but like now, like you're not seeing as much zombie content, which is great for us because I think it's gonna come back into the fold. So like, what are some things that we're working on that might be new? And that's one of our focuses, is something we're passionate about, but also we don't want to be late to the party, right? That's the most important thing. So you will not see Vampires versus Zombies anytime soon in any type of comic, animation, or board game that we produce. That is for sure.
Yeah, and I think that kind of leads us into like what this podcast is about, right? So like Board2Dev it was kind of started off as like a spin-off idea of let's talk about board game development, right? But as you think about the actual name and what we're talking about is like when Chris and I are bored, we're literally trying to develop anything, like anything at all, because we don't know what's going to hit. You never know what's going to hit. And if you're somebody who just focuses on one thing, when that thing fails, you become miserable because you're like, I spent X amount of time fucking developing this, and then no one gives a shit, and now I don't know what the fuck I'm supposed to do. And so realistically, what Board2Dev is it's about us and our journey on developing things because we were bored and wanting to be passionate about it. And that's kind of where Cardboard Monster Studio is. It's like a regurgitation of our brain, and we're gonna put everything up there that we feel needs to be up there, whether it's completed, not completed, in progress, being looked at, or even we retire it. It needs to be up there because I want Board2Dev and I want Cardboard Monster Studios to be a living, breathing thing of like, hey, let's go and look at what these guys have worked on, right? And some of it may be successful, some of it may not, but we don't give a shit because we know that we need to just like share our journey with everybody on what it is to actually develop things and go to it and tell you what worked and what didn't work. I think you can learn a lot from like our mistakes, and we learn a lot from our own mistakes. And in doing that, Cardboard Monster Studios came about, and now we have, Chris kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, Channel 86. We have UNIBOT, which is something that's come about. We have Extremely Mad Popsicles. We're playing with the idea of like getting into the toy line. We already have like enamel pin stuff. Taking partnerships with like other companies and licensing and stuff like that. So, that's kind of where we're gonna go, and really what you're gonna start to see from this podcast. I think too, Chris, we talked a little bit about it, but the idea of getting people on the show, like guest people, I really want to get BJ on so we could talk to him about the opposite side of development, right? So like when he was doing that, to give people the idea and the understanding of what it's like as an artist being told what you want, right, from this creative person, and basically like having to like listen to them and then them telling you that's not exactly what I want. But it's good to hear the artist side, and I don't think a lot of people hear the artist side. Um, so I think the guest our guest list will run pretty deep in terms of like things like that. But um, I think that we should kind of get into some of the upfront projects that we're working on, and maybe we could expand on that a little bit later in another cast. But I think this is a good time to kind of just bring to light and just kind of put it out there for people to understand what it is that we're currently working on.
Yeah, I like the idea of like every episode, maybe either deep diving into something that has further come along, and or just spend a little bit of time highlighting a specific project that we're working on.
Yeah,
And then I'm excited to just talk about anything that's relevant as it pertains to what we're excited about in the world of entertainment and the industries that we are a part of. Including the Comic Con's virtual again, which totally, totally
fucked over.
understandable. We're,
Yeah,
I will tell you that Cardboard Monster Studios is hoping, not this year, but 2022 for San Diego Comic Con that we'll be there live, and hopefully we'll have some of these projects live and ready, and maybe doing a Board2Dev podcast as well. But let's let's start with some of the board games maybe that we're working on, and one in particular. Actually, two that we were working on. If for those of you who had followed us along on our journey, we were in process of developing. We took you through the early stages of planning for a card game called Stacking Dragons, which is still in development. That we're really excited about.
yep,
And while that is still being worked on, we started to also think about a more simplistic board game to play, card game to play,
yep.
and it stemmed from. So Jason shared with me some of his zany art, and some of his art that he just randomly showed me was some popsicle heads, some like cartoon type of popsicle heads. And we talk about inspiration. I looked at that and I was like, that's fucking great.
Yeah,
We got to use it somehow. So I thought about how do we use some of the existing artwork and develop a tabletop game that's like quirky and fun and just like so like weird that people would be excited about it. And I flagged this idea to Jason, and we worked on it. And it's called Extremely Mad Popsicles, and it's probably the farthest along we have in a tabletop game. And the art is almost wrapped up, and we've game tested it, and we're getting into like the final stages of game testing, where then we'll start to incorporate some outside of Cardboard Monster Studios testing. But do you want to talk a little bit about like the journey of like me and you talking about the artwork specifically? Because the easiest part I think was figuring out the mechanics. The hard
yeah,
part was like the art development.
yeah.
That
So
to me was the hardest part.
yeah, I mean, look, the game is super simple, right? Like if you look at unicorns and zombies, every card has some type of art to it, and so um, I think that the art direction really came once we had an idea of the general idea um, of the mechanics. So we knew that we knew how the game was going to work. We knew what the core concept was, and then that gave us the ability to understand like, okay, we need X amount of popsicles. And then when we played with the idea of popsicles, and we were like, okay, but there needs to be like a hero pop, right? Like we need to have like an epic popsicle, like something that's like more heuristic. And so uh, while I had at the time sent Chris, it was only two. It was only two popsicles. One was a zombie, and the other one was just like a mad popsicle. And I had sent that to Chris, and he was like, "Dude, this is funny as shit. It's got to be a game." And then I think the first initial part was like webcomic, right? But then we were like, "Nah, game." And then you were like, "Okay, this." So we decided that they would be fighting like they'd be fighting the ice cream truck, and from that we decided that we actually needed like themed popsicles, and so that became difficult because it was like, well, I didn't really initially draw it for the idea of let's expand it to 20 popsicles and like 7 hero pops. And so I, at the time, it's just like, these are funny as shit. Maybe there's something with this. And so we then got into like, what would be funny like as popsicles, right? And so we came up with things like Ghost Popsicle. And then the hero pops have this ability that's triggered if you pull the ability card, and so those had to have like specific abilities related to the type of popsicle. And so we were thinking about cool abilities, and this is where we came up with the concept of an ability before we could even name it, right? So we had I'm trying to remember what the first hero pop was.
It was, well, you had already created 2 hero pops that we used. One was the angry one, and then we had that zombie one that we called Lame Brain.
Yeah.
So those were the 2 initial hero pops. That was the 2 original pieces of art that you had showed me. And see, that's the example of what we just had referenced, where you drew these because it was like you had the inspiration to draw these popsicle heads.
Yeah.
You showed it to me. I took it to another avenue, another level of like, we can use this in games. And then we started to develop the game, and then you took the initial idea of the game and then took it to another level. And that's like that creative energy back and forth that develops the concept from a sketch, right? That is really amazing. It's the opposite in a sense, right? Because typically, like in working in the comic field, you got the writers, right? Like my job primarily was writing. So I'm writing, I got the dialogue. This scene here, splash page here, and then I give it to the artist who does it, right? And there's limited creative freedom unless you're like a big artist like that, right? But this was, you just created something and you gave it to literally like a writer who then took it to like, hey, what about this? And a sneak peek. Not only did we do like start developing a game from this, we started developing a fucking animation off the damn popsicle head. Yeah. And the animation is called Sticks, and it's based off another piece of artwork that Jason had, which is a fucking like rabbit and a popsicle head who live in an ice cream truck. And the adventures that they have, it's just off the wall. Going back to Ren and Stimpy and Rick and Morty, our shit's even weirder than that. So again, going back to like 1 or 2 sketches turned into something that we're hoping both are successful, and as time progresses, we'll continue to share out on this podcast.
Yeah, and even to go like even a step further, and we'll actually probably start documenting the next few things we talk about, but even to go a step further, the original concept of those popsicle heads were that I wanted to do a new line of enamel pins. And so for me, it was like, what is simple? What would be cool to collect, right? And popsicles. I'm talking about popsicles like they have one stick and then they have the 2 things up the middle, and it's like people call them ice pops or whatever, right? And so that's where it originally came from. And then I was like, these would be cool because I could like skin them. I drew a Captain America one. I did like a Wolverine. And I was like, this is fucking hilarious, but I can't afford the title for these, so these are my own, right? But then that's when I sent it to you. And what's awesome now is that like we're in the process of the fucking animation. We got the card game coming out of it. We're working on possibly starting out the final toy line of it. So there's like a whole process, and it's such a fucking good idea, blowing our own horns right now, like that we've shown this to people and had people play it already and they're like, this is one of the funnest games I've ever played. So it's crazy because we spent, just to give reference, we've spent a total hardworking total amount of time, maybe 2 months. I spent 3.5 fucking years on Unicorns and Zombies. You know what I mean? And sure, it's not the game isn't as in detailed as Unicorns and Zombies, and we could get into that later. We have another game that we're building out called Mythic Mayhem. That's collectible card game craziness. That's, I mean, we've been working on that for a while. But like, Extremely Mad Popsicles is so much fun to work with and work on that there's going to be so many things that we get to bring to you guys just about development on that alone, that I am super excited about. And I think right now my favorite popsicle so far to date is the Luchador Pop.
Yep.
That is probably one of my favorite. That one and the headband one, but that's because Headband Club. But
it's great, man. And we can't wait to tell you about our own version of Warhammer coming out 2022. just fucking kidding. Just like years and years of fucking like writing the Bible for the game. And like, could you imagine?
But you don't know. It might be based in the Unicorns and Zombies lore, which we have already written out anyways. So but going into that, like when you think about the creative side of it, I mean, since then we've spawned Channel 86. You can find that on YouTube. The first episode's coming out soon, but it's like it's just a public access channel that's run by Chet Maddox and Rad Insight, Colt Cannon, Max Power, Straight. So like there's so much stuff that's happening that would be fantastic to just bring to this podcast, and we'll bring people on from our other areas and ventures of business to talk about their side of it, because that's super important. One of the things I'm super excited about, and I just want to bring up in this podcast, is when you look at the state of business of streaming, and I'm a big proponent of people streaming, of people being artists and showing their form of art. One of the things that we have started, and you can check it out if you go to unibot.gg, you can check out the website there. But we are creating, between myself and two other guys, we're creating like DMCA free streaming music. And I know that there's other companies out there that are doing that, but we want to bring our own touch to that as well. And so we started out as creating this area for people to be comfortable streaming. We already have 2 albums out. The third one's getting ready to launch within the next 2 months. And it's just music that you can use in your background of your stream. That, however, has turned into an artist collective of streamers of all shapes and sizes, and it's getting a lot of traction. We're very exclusive in terms of like what we're doing for streamers. So if you want to know more about that, definitely hit it up. But we're hoping to really change the streaming industry, and we'll be bringing to this podcast exclusively like behind the scenes of what we're doing to develop UNIBOT. So please make sure that you guys like come back and check in on that, as well as like everything that we're doing. Like hopefully someone finds some form of interest in this and you guys want to hear more. You can definitely like hit us up and leave comments in whatever podcast app you listen to, Spotify, iTunes, YouTube. The videos, these are recorded, and so we are publishing them to YouTube, so you can watch them if you just want some shit to listen to in the background while you're filling out your Excel sheets for work at home. But we're really hoping that we can just blow up your social medias and things with content from this podcast, as well as everything else that we're doing. But UNIBOT has become a massive passion of Chris and mine, to really empower and really show the true artist side of streamers. And unfortunately, in this day and age, small streamers get buried under the bus, and we're not about that. And what we're bringing to UNIBOT for small streamers is a whole different era and idea behind the idea of being sponsored, and having an outlet for you to show your style, do what you need to do, get your name out there as a small streamer, and having a team behind you to kind of help you on that path. And we're not looking at big streamers. Like, we're not looking for Noah J, who streams Warzone, Doctor Disrespect, any of those guys, anyone that's like 100 Thieves. What we're doing is we're basically on path and in the right direction to become a competitor of those brands, but for small streamers and that business. And that is something that Chris and I are massively fucking passionate about. And the exclusivity is there specifically for the fact that we want people who are super interested to pay attention to that and to be part of that artist collective. And I'm super excited about it. Unfortunately, because of the nature of that, we can't really say a lot about it. So if you're interested, unibot.gg, you can put in your email. If you find somebody that's talking about it word of mouth, they might be able to invite you. You can hit us up. We could, maybe talk a little bit more, but it really is a passion project for streamers of small caliber, right? Like we don't really give a shit about the big guys because they're already there,
Yeah.
So
Yeah. No, we're passionate about supporting the people that have a lot of passions and interests and just don't have the means to accomplish it. So
yeah,
we've grinded and we'll continue to grind out and hopefully be successful in multiple areas that we're passionate about and bring people and help people with us along the way. And that is that's what we're passionate about. And I think that's as you hit it on the head. This podcast will evolve into sharing those ideas and concepts and having some special interviews. And I'm super stoked for bringing this back. I think we've carved out enough time for us to be able to do this on a weekly basis, and we can increase. We may throw more episodes on depending on what's going on, but we got some exciting shit to share with you as we just talked about. And I'm stoked, man. I can't wait for the next couple months. I can't wait for Channel 86 as well. So a lot of shit happening, man. And I'm super excited to share with everybody here who's listening or watching.
Yeah. And I'm going to do shameless plugs right now because why the fuck not, if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to subscribe, hit the fucking bell, comment, let us know what you think about it. On any of the platforms you get your podcast from, make sure that you subscribe. Rate us. If you want to rate us a 1-star, that's better than no stars. So fucking who cares? Rate it. Leave comments in there. We're actively watching for the interactions, and there's a good chance that if you have good enough things to say, we'll want to bring you onto this podcast because again, it's about sharing information, getting it out there. And frankly, we think our shit doesn't stink, so we have a lot to say, as some people might say. But yeah, really excited for this, Chris. I'm happy we've finally been able to land on getting these out and on a weekly basis. Some podcasts might not be as good as this one just due to me traveling and moving from California to Georgia. But we'll do our best. I think that's the most that we could do. But for sure, over the next few weeks, we'll be having some podcasts come out. I'm really excited, man. So. I think that's it for me. I think it blew enough hot air. I don't know about you.
Yeah, man. Again, I'm excited, and thanks for everyone listening and tuning in. And we'll see you on the next episode. And as Jason said, we're just two guys that are taking our creative ideas and trying to make shit happen. And we'd love to help anybody else that's trying to make shit happen as well. We should have called it the Make Shit Happen podcast, but hey, Board2Dev sticks. It's got a nice ring to it. So man, I can't wait to catch up next week, man.
Yeah, definitely. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, later.
Bye.